Welcome to this talk on the First World War Lives project. I'm Hannah Stamp, an archivist at the East Riding Archives based at the Treasure House in Beverley, and I will take you through what our project has on offer to help with your research. The First World War Lives project tells the stories of 1,100 service personnel, and growing, who are local to the East Riding of Yorkshire, researched by our team of over 20 volunteers. All of these stories are now available on the East Riding Archives online catalogue under the collections reference WL, and with a selection of 150 showcased in our new online exhibition. These life stories are an invaluable body of research for those interested in the local men and women who took part in the First World War, and includes individuals who served in the Army, the Royal Navy, Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Air Force, and other organisations such as the British Red Cross. These lives are useful for both local and family historians, whether you're interested in researching a military ancestor or just wanting to examine the social history and personal situations of everyday people in the East Riding. The project would not be where it is today without our fantastic team of project volunteers who started their research in 2014. Their starting point was the Green's Almanac, an annual directory listing local services and people, and which included a roll of honour during the First World War. Most of the lives research derived from portrait photographs and names published in the Green's Almanac and also in the Beverley Guardian newspaper. These photographs show individuals of all ranks and walks of life, most of whom until now we knew little about other than their names and faces. Every detail about these men and women's lives were then researched in depth, from when and where they were born, their family relationships, occupations, and the stories of their life at war and events back home. To do this, our volunteers delved into many different archival sources available to everyone interested in research in this period in order to compile a research folder and a biography. From this body of research, each folder has a unique reference number with descriptions added to our online archives catalogue, enabling the collection to be searched by names, places, occupations and other keywords. Our collections at the East Riding Archives assisted our volunteers with researching the personal and working lives of the servicemen and women, both before and after service, including 20th century parish registers which are not available online. Many of the lives had occupations where information can be found in our collections, such as policemen in the East Riding Constabulary or Hull City Police, or employment in the East Riding County Council. We also hold original diaries of some of the servicemen, such as Arthur Elliker Ross, who detailed his wartime experiences until his death. Our volunteers harnessed many of the World War I resources held online to conduct their research. Military service records held by the National Archives are made available on commercial genealogy websites such as Ancestry and Find My Past, provided access to attestation and discharge records, pension records and medal cards. The Find War Dead database managed by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission was also an extremely useful resource for finding grave and memorial locations of the East Riding military. Let's have a look at some of the topics explored in the exhibition. As the lives in this project were based off the Green's Almanac, there was sadly only a selection of women who had their name and photographs published. So there is a huge opportunity here to widen the search for East Riding women who joined the war effort, and for their biographies to be compiled and added to the WL collection. We found that many women were named in the Green's Almanac or in the local newspapers only by their initials or in relation to their husband's name, such as Florence Balderson here, whose photograph is annotated as Mrs. Fred Balderson. Those that have been researched do provide a valuable insight into some of the roles women undertook within organisations such as the British Red Cross and the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps. Another research thread is teenage enlistments. It has been estimated that 250,000 youngsters under the age of 19 answered the call to fight amidst the grip of patriotism sweeping the country. The East Riding was no different. Many boys enlisted as teenagers with their ages going unchecked by recruiting officers. Although they're not related, Harold and Sydney Clark here both enlisted whilst young. Harold when he was 15 and Sydney when he was 16. His medical papers annotated with apparent age of 19 years. These are just two of many examples of underage enlistments in the project's collection. For those interested in researching the Church Lads Brigade, the collection also features many young boys who joined the Beverley branch, which was founded and commanded by Neville Hobson from 1908. Many of the lives researched were posted all around the world, taking part in various campaigns. The biographies go into depth of their activities abroad, in campaigns as far-reaching as Russia, the Caribbean, Canada and Africa. On our online exhibition, there is a handy interactive map where you can click on the location pins and view the individual's photo, campaign detail and a web link that will take you through to the relevant research file and biography on our online catalogue. We'll be adding more lives to this map in the future. The project can be used to explore the far reach of East Riding military personnel, as many spent the entire war in those distant places. You can find out more information about campaign activities in their biographies. Prisoners of war is another topic explored in the online exhibition and is something many of the lives researched experienced, particularly at the camps in Germany. Unfortunately, some men died in captivity, such as John Gillian, who caught pneumonia whilst he was held captive in a German camp and died on the 14th of November 1918, only 3 days after the armistice. For those fortunate to return home, such as William Hoggard, several talked about their experiences whilst being held captive. Hoggard told the Beverley Guardian newspaper that the camp conditions at Friedrichsfeld on the Rhine were harsh. In particular, he struggled with the lack of food. The biographies in the project enable researchers to see where East Riding men were typically held captive and the personal and wider impact this captivity incurred. Mental health, injury, disease and infection took a terrible toll on the lives of service personnel in the First World War. The biographies show how the experience of war affected the soldiers physically and also mentally. If you search the collection, you will find that many of the servicemen suffered illnesses such as fever, trench foot, scabies and trench nephritis. In addition to physical injuries, mental illness also affected many men, radically changing their lives when they returned back from the front. The sad story of Arthur Oxtoby, who returned to working life as a caretaker at his local picture house, is one such example. Although he had a wife and 6 children, only a year after he was discharged from service in France due to physical injuries, he was tragically found in the Barmston drain with his 19-year-old colleague Lily Edwards. A coroner ruled their deaths as suicide. The impact of war on communities in the East Riding becomes apparent when you collate the stories of those who survived the conflict but suffered health issues long after war was over. Throughout the First World War, many East Riding families saw all of their sons, brothers, uncles and fathers enlist. The WL collection features many families, with some living down the same street, whose lives were transformed by the war. Sadly, not all family members returned, with some dying in action or of their wounds soon after. With the men sent to war, this often left the women back home responsible for supporting the entire family. This example here shows 3 families who lived at Slow Lane in Beverley during the First World War. The Gledhills lived at number 13, the Binningtons at number 20 and the Samples at number 16. Several of the sons were killed in action and others were taken as prisoners of war. If you conduct a search in the catalogue, you will find many more families with multiple siblings or relations who all served abroad, with the potential to study the impacts these experiences had on the families back home. The life stories uncovered in this project support studies in local history in several ways. You can investigate the people and events that took place locally in the East Riding, before the individual enlisted and after they returned. Most of the lives researched were your everyday people who worked on farms, who worked on the high street at Boots Chemist and Greens of Beverley, who worked for the East Riding Constabulary, the Beverley Corporation, and major industrial employers such as Hodgson's Tannery. You can also connect faces, stories and communities to the names commemorated on local war memorials spread across the East Riding. Looking more broadly, you can see how the East Riding was involved in, responded to and was affected by international events and actions of World War I. How did the East Riding react to the announcement of war in 1914? Which industries were most affected by men leaving to fight? Were there any communities more fortunate than others in the return of their servicemen? By understanding the individual lives, these biographies help us to build a bigger picture of the impacts of the events of the war on families, institutions and employers. When brought together, these personal stories form the collective World War I history of the East Riding. Thank you for listening to this 10-minute talk on how you can make use of our First World War Lives project for your research. This talk skims the surface of what you can find in the collection, so if you would like to know more, please take a look at our online exhibition, which you can view at www.eastridingarchives.co.uk/World War I Lives. And this will direct you to many of the free resources produced as part of the project, and a link to our online catalogue where you can browse the full collection of over 1,100 biographies.